All right, so Tim, first a tough one. What's the last Pandora radio station you created?
Oh, geez. I think Ben Folds. I've created many, but I want a new Ben Folds station, a little different from the last.
Oh, why would you need a new one?
I want a new sort of set of songs. I want to kind of branch out to a different part of his catalog.
Okay. My other favorite is I think my favorite aspect of Pandora right now is your ticker symbol, P. That is very cool to have a single letter ticker. How do you get P?
Kind of part of the process of figuring out which market to go out on, and that's definitely a big appeal. Getting the P, simple, it feels good.
Not that it has the stock price, doing anything special. The P doesn't put any value in the stock, apparently. Right, that's what I expected from you in that. Okay, as of the last time you reported your numbers, Pandora has 37 million active users. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. You have said that Pandora has finally hit scale. What does that mean? What does scale allow you to do?
I think it means a handful of things. It starts, of course, with the listening audience, and I think we are large enough now as a company, sort of our reach, to make us interesting to a huge palette of advertisers. And we started off initially, fighting for dollars from national advertisers principally. Now Pandora is beginning to be large enough in smaller markets, more local markets, that we can actually attract the interest of local advertisers, which you probably know is historically the largest part of revenue for radio. So we're beginning to kind of be able to address a much broader and deeper range of advertisers.
So we're going to talk a lot about competition in the next 17 and a half minutes, but explain why and how, and maybe even take 20, 30 seconds for the 2 or 3 people in the room who don't use Pandora to explain what Pandora is. And what I'm most interested in is you think of yourselves as more like a radio station than anything else, correct?
Yeah, no, we are definitely a radio. It's a new form of radio. We call it personalized radio. So it allows people to create stations based on artists or songs, kind of their personal preferences, and then lean back and let it play, or actually engage with it and sort of fine-tune stations from their starting point. And over time, thanks to technology, this product is becoming available pretty ubiquitously. It started off on the desktop, and now it's branched out into living rooms and cars, so it's becoming sort of much more like a radio writ large.
With this really interesting difference being that I choose the type of music I'm going to listen to as opposed to a traditional radio station, which maybe the whole station is devoted to that type, but then they're going to choose what to play.
Yeah, and I think, in my opinion, the biggest tectonic shift that's hitting the music industry is this change from broadcast radio to personalized sort of internet radio on a bunch of different levels. One, of course, is because you're creating your own stations, it means the diversity of catalog that gets played on radio is vast, much more vast on a service like Pandora. We have in our collection over 900,000 songs, and 95% of those songs spun in July on Pandora. So it really is addressing the long tail. Most of that music doesn't get played on radio. So I think it's not only a different experience for listeners, but from the creators, the artists, it's giving access to a much broader catalog. So I think that's one. The second piece is we pay royalties, which we'll probably talk about.
Sure.
We pay performers every time we spin a song, which isn't true of broadcast radio. And historically, broadcast radio has been the biggest piece of the music industry, larger than retail, larger than live shows, and artists have never participated in that portion of the industry. Now they're getting to.
How do they pay, if not a royalty per song?
So broadcasters pay a publishing fee, the composers get paid, which we also pay, but the performers don't get paid anything. So it's a big, big pot of found money for artists.
Okay, now, but as a result, you don't have to cut individual deals. Is that correct with publishers?
That's right.
You take it, you play it, you pay.
Yeah, and a very distinct and important characteristic of web radio is that we're licensed through a compulsory federal license, essentially. It gives us permission through one vehicle to play our entire catalog. Mm-hmm. No direct licensing involved.
Now, one of the interesting things that's happened, your company's actually been around for 11 years, right?
Yeah.
Which is, a long time for a startup, and now you're public, and you can finally stop being called a startup. But you have I completely lost my train of thought on you've been around for 11 years. Yes, you did a complete and unexpected shift several years ago. You were completely on the web. Everybody was using desktop computers, and then what happened?
The iPhone launched summer of '07, I'm going to say, and overnight it just completely transformed our business. I think in two ways. One, it dramatically accelerated our growth. We almost doubled our growth rate overnight the day the iPhone launched.
Growth rate measured by what?
New registered users coming to Pandora each day. So just that single device just catapulted our growth. But I think more importantly, what it did is it changed Pandora from being sort of a desktop computer radio to more like a radio, because people began taking iPhones and eventually Android devices, Blackberries, Palm, et cetera, on their own and plugging them into stuff and listening to Pandora, in a car, or in their living room, taking it to the gym. And so without us really doing anything except building an app on the iPhone, we suddenly became sort of anytime, anywhere. And I think now, if you look at our sort of bandwidth usage, weekday, weekend, daytime, evening, kind of looks the same because people are using it all over the place.
And 70% of your usage is on mobile devices as opposed to
That's
the
the
web.
ballpark, yeah.
And so the generalization is, so now you've put out statistics, you've said things like in certain cities you're bigger than the biggest radio station, correct, in terms of usage?
That's right.
But would I be correct in assuming that your revenue in any one of those cities would be far smaller than the biggest radio station's advertising revenue?
Well, I don't have access to the specific numbers for radio stations, but we are just now really coming online, if you will, with these smaller markets. We're beginning to hire local salespeople and beginning to attract advertising dollars that have been traditionally spent on broadcast, so local car dealerships, local grocers, and so on. So there's no doubt that we're just beginning to tap into the market that in some ways is kind of the holy grail for radio.
But even in the bigger markets where you do have more developed sales forces, you're a new medium. You're not as established as the radio station that's been calling on these accounts for 15 years and is charging more money.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they're far more efficient than we are at monetizing at this stage, for sure.
More efficient in monetizing, better at selling is what you're saying.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, interesting. Now, let's talk about the competition. So you're web radio, which means that all these companies that are doing other things, in your view, you don't compete with. Is that true?
That's correct.
So you don't compete with Spotify, you don't compete with Rhapsody, you don't compete with iTunes.
Yeah, I think that a statistic that surprises a lot of people is that if you look at music listening in the US, let's say an American listens to an average of about 16 to 17 hours of music a week. Historically, 80% of those hours have been on radio, and that remains true today. So even now, 4/5 of the time people spend on music is on radio. Only about 20% is spent on stuff you own. And stuff you own now means not just your CD collection and your MP3 collection, but a subscription service, a place you can go and listen to Dark Side of the Moon from beginning to end, that you can decide exactly what you're going to listen to. And even with all these great new innovations, and Spotify is a great service that are making that on-demand consumption really elegant and sort of ubiquitous, even with all that, still, people mostly want to hit a button, hear some music, some stuff they know, some stuff they don't know, and have it be sort of low effort. And we have lived alongside subscription services for years and have never found it to be a choice of one or the other. People listen to them together.
So you're saying that, let's just say for argument's sake, that Spotify is going to be the subscription winner. They're certainly the winner of the subscription buzz at the moment. You see a typical use case where people are going to subscribe to Spotify and use Pandora.
Yeah, I think a power user for music would listen to Pandora, find some songs they like, and then go buy them on iTunes or listen to them on demand on Rhapsody or Spotify or Mog or RDO, and kind of use them both in tandem.
Aren't you concerned that the search capabilities of some of these services, I mean, iTunes, for example, can dig into the use case of Pandora? I can discover music on some of those services too.
Yeah, I mean, it's not 100%, distinct. There's obviously some overlap, but I think at a high level, the place where we operate in the minds of listeners and sort of listening habits, we compete with radio. So other web radio and, of course, broadcast radio, which is still where the vast majority of radio listening resides, and that's kind of the hours we're going after.
Now, you made a change recently where for a couple years you've had if you've had a cap on usage. If I wanted to go over, what was it, 40 hours a month?
That's right.
You were going to ask for some money from me. Why did you eliminate that?
A mere 99 cents. Yeah.
99 cents per hour after the 40th hour?
No, for unlimited for the rest of the month.
Oh, okay. That was a pretty good deal.
Yeah, I know. I thought so. And a good number of people did too on Pandora. But what really happened for us is, as our company has matured, as our advertising sales have matured and we've reached the scale and so on, we've become better at selling advertising. And it has also meant that we've become better at subsidizing a long-term listener because our advertising base is more diverse. Mm-hmm. So there was a time when after 40 hours it got kind of harder for us to kind of keep advertisers interested in that same listener.
Yeah.
Now there's enough of them that it kind of makes sense for us. So I think it's a signal that things are really starting to churn on the advertising sales part.
Could you share your favorite line with the audience of advertiser behavior as you get more diverse? They'll pay $1 for what?
Oh, yeah. So sort of put simply, they'll pay $1 to reach you once, but not $2 to reach you twice.
Yep.
That's hence the sort of scale problem.
Okay, but you still offer a subscription service. Why would I want to pay Pandora at all, given that you're giving me so much for free?
Well, the principal reason that people do is to get rid of advertising. That's the number one reason. You also get a higher fidelity audio stream.
Okay. Autos. You're in autos. You're going to be in more autos. How does that work?
So obviously, cars is a big arena for us. About half of radio listening happens in the car. And I think there are going to be sort of phases for that. The first phase, which we're in right now, is the smartphone is kind of your modem. It's bringing Pandora into the car. And through Bluetooth or some kind of pin connector, the car sort of hijacks the controls of Pandora into the dashboard. Sometimes it's hard buttons, so you can fast forward, toggle stations, et cetera, using the car's interface. In the case of Ford, you can actually use it with voice commands. So you can skip songs, you can use verbal commands to do it. That's kind of phase one, which I think is going to last us for a while. But cars, it's going to take us a while to get there because people don't buy, they don't buy them every year like they do smartphones. So it'll take a while to penetrate the car business.
And before I go to the audience, which I'm going to do in a moment, if people want to come to the mics, is how's this comedy thing working out for Pandora?
Comedy's been great. It was a very logical kind of adjacent offering for us, and we hired a bunch of comedians and built a comedy genome project. So sort of much the same way that we broke down music into hundreds of attributes, we did the same thing with comedy. And it's been great on Pandora.
You've begun to offer video advertising. Wouldn't it be a logical next step to extend Pandora to video?
I mean, thought crosses our head. I think that to do that, we'd have to be convinced that the effort and inherent distraction of sort of chasing after a new product is sort of worth the benefit to the consumer. Music, it's super obvious. Massive catalog, the navigation issue is huge, and it's our core expertise. So kind of think about it. Nothing that we're specifically excited about right now.
And what about non-music, non-comedy radio? Are there other opportunities? News comes to mind.
Yeah, I mean, same kind of thing. I think about 15% of radio is talk, weather, sports, news, and you can certainly imagine doing something interesting in that arena, especially given that we do have localization, we have zip codes and so on, so we can do interesting things, but nothing to sort of talk about right now.
Okay. Questions? Yes, please. Just identify yourself, please.
Yeah, Jean-Baptiste Su with L'Expansion in Paris. What about, can you talk a little bit about international expansion?
Yeah, it gives me gray hair. Being global is most definitely part of this company's vision. And there was a time in the beginning of Pandora before we started to IP block. We had to build IP blocking that we were growing pretty fast outside the US.
IP block means to stop people outside of jurisdictions where you had authority.
Exactly. And it was very popular then, even as an English-only catalog, which it now is much more diverse than that. The issue, of course, is licensing. So we have tried for years to sort of broker some kind of reasonable licensing fees to offer Pandora outside the United States, and it's by and large been pretty frustrating. Our hope really is that over time, the rights organizations in other countries, as they watch what's happening in the US, are going to eventually kind of say, wait a minute, either they will, or all the artists whose interests they ostensibly serve are going to say, what's going on here? This company, Pandora, is growing gangbusters in the US, paying massive amounts of royalties, driving tons of sales, and offering great exposure for this catalog of musicians. We want that here. So what's the problem? That's kind of our hope, but it has been frustrating, I have to admit.
Please.
I don't know if there we are. Hi, Tim. I'm a huge fan of Pandora, a power user, definitely that 70%.
And your name and organization are?
I'm Catherine Posey, founder of Tech by Superwomen. My question for you is two-part. How do you plan on getting more social graph and interest graph information on your users? And then what are your plans to use that data to enhance products and services?
Thank you.
So social. So we've had a long and great relationship with Facebook, and we are part of Facebook Connect. And obviously, music is a very social category for all of us. But it's a little bit different, I think, than other categories in that, on the one hand, music is very social, and we like to sort of tell our friends about a new song we found, or we want to go to shows together and share all that. At the same time, there's a certain kind of self-consciousness people have about what their favorite songs or what their favorite artists are. And I think that it puts a little bit of friction in the sort of, let it all hang out there approach to sort of the real viral social stuff. And we start first and foremost with a very, very, I'd say, conservative approach to data, privacy, sort of openness, really letting individuals have a lot of control over that, decide in their own way, in their own time, how to share and with who. Much more on that end of the spectrum than a much more kind of aggressive liberal approach to it. So we talk about this stuff all the time inside Pandora. We certainly talk with Facebook at length before the conference came, F8, and we'll keep exploring it. We want to do it right.
The presumption is this data is very valuable to advertisers as well, right?
Well, sure. Right now for us, we have sort of plenty of data to make this a very attractive advertising platform. We know the age, the gender, and the zip code, along with the kind of music for every listener at any given moment on Pandora. So we can offer tremendously well-targeted campaigns right now that I think accommodate 90% of what an advertiser wants. I wouldn't say that we feel like we lack in data to drive that. So not a big pain point for us.
Tim, we're out of time. I want to say thank you very much.
You bet. Thanks.
Adam, well done. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, Tim.